Authorities have opened a joint investigation into the area in Gyeongsangbuk-do province, where the fire first started, that ultimately led to the worst wildfire damage in the country. On the first day of the resumption of short selling in Korea, local stocks fell 3%, while the Korean currency weakened against the greenback to a level unseen since March 2009. Myanmar is reeling from last week's devastating earthquake that killed over 1,700 people and destroyed the homes of many others. It's March 31st, 8 p.m. in Seoul. This is Newscenter. Thank you for joining us. I'm Yoon Jung-min. With the main fires in the country contained after a long uphill battle, authorities now turn their eyes to figure out what caused the disaster. Lee Soo-jin has more.
South Korean police, along with the National Forensic Service and firefighting authorities, have launched their first joint investigation into the country's worst ever wildfire. Police in Gyeongsangbuk-do province on Monday morning using drones began conducting on-site inspections in Useong-gun County, the ignition site of the wildfire in the province, to determine what caused it and the direction in which the fire spread. The fires in Gyeongsangbuk-do province saw about 480 square kilometers of woodland affected, equivalent to 80% of the size of Seoul, and left 26 people dead. The police plan to examine traces of flames left on the trees around the tomb and the surrounding areas to determine the direction that the fire spread, and search the area around the site of the ignition to find any evidence of materials that may have caused the fire. Analysis of the evidence found from the on-site inspections is expected to take at least 3 weeks. The police revealed on Sunday that they booked a 56-year-old man on Friday without detention on charges of starting the fire on March 22nd while tending to the grave of his grandparents. The man denies the charges. On Saturday, the police found a lighter that was found at the scene and has requested analysis from the National Forensic Service for fingerprints or DNA evidence. With the main fires in both Gyeongsangbuk-do and Gyeongsangnam-do provinces now contained, the government is also focusing on helping those affected. This includes providing temporary housing and livelihood support for those who have been displaced. More than 3,000 houses were completely burned down, and significant damage was also inflicted on 30 national heritage sites and 2,000 agricultural facilities. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
Amid unstable global stock markets, as well as the resumption of short selling at home, local stocks were sharply down today. Park Jun-han has the details.
Starting Monday, South Korea resumed short selling on its stock market after a 17-month suspension. And for the first time in 5 years, the country is allowing short selling for all listed stocks. With investors now able to borrow and sell stocks before buying them back later, the market is seeing increased volatility, which has intensified amid falling global stock prices. The benchmark Kospi at around 1:30 p.m. briefly dropped below 2,480 points. At the market's close on Monday, 3:30 p.m. local time, the Kospi closed at around 2,481, down 3% from last Friday's market close. On the same day, the value of the US dollar against the Korean won climbed to 1,472.91 per dollar, up 6.41 from last Friday's close. This is the highest since March 2009. Short selling involves investors borrowing stocks, selling them at the market price, and later repurchasing them, ideally at a lower price, to return to the lender.
That's what you have in a normal market, in any international market. If it goes too high, you have short sellers to stop it from going too high.
To create a safer and fairer stock trading environment and to facilitate the return of short selling, the Korea Exchange is implementing measures such as strengthened penalties for illegal short selling and increased monitoring of transaction activities. Additionally, those who borrow stocks must repay them within 90 days, with an extension of up to a year.
Well, the large complaint that the individual investors had was that larger companies were engaged in naked short selling. That means short selling without borrowed stocks on hand. And then I believe they have now databases for short selling transactions so that anybody can see that the transactions are done fairly rather than below the table. So sometimes.
Amid short-term market volatility, industry experts emphasize the long-term necessity of short selling in Korea, as it is expected to attract more foreign capital inflow, enhance liquidity, and help investors manage risks. Park Jun-an, Arirang News.
President Yoon Suk-yeol's impeachment case has lasted for more than 3 months. As the Constitutional Court justices take a record amount of time to deliberate on his political fate. This is leading to various speculations. Our correspondent Oh Soo-young explains.
The Constitutional Court is working cautiously and thoroughly on President Yoon Suk-yeol's impeachment case, as speculation continues over when the justices will deliver their ruling. Appearing before the National Assembly on Monday, the Constitutional Court Secretary-General Kim Jong-un said the 8-member bench is deliberating with caution in their frequent in-depth reviews and discussions. Kim added even he wasn't informed of how many times the justices convened or what stage they were in their deliberations due to the high level of confidentiality. The justices have been deliberating for more than a month after Yoon's final trial hearing in February, the longest period yet for a presidential case. Once each justice concludes their review and expresses their opinion, the bench is expected to draw up their collective decision before announcing the ruling date 2 to 3 days in advance. While some believe the ruling could be as early as this Thursday, if the bench schedules a Friday ruling in line with past presidential impeachments, April 4th and 11th are key dates to watch. But given the record deliberation period, other observers say the verdict could take longer to be issued, as the justices may be sharply split in their opinions on whether or not President Yoon's martial law declaration warrants an impeachment. The court needs at least 6 votes to remove a president. If 3 or more justices are against impeachment, Yoon will be restored to office. At this point, April 18th is broadly considered the deadline for the bench, the date Justices Moon Young-bae and Lee Mi-sun retire. In 2017, the court dismissed President Park Geun-hye on a Friday before Acting Chief Justice Lee Jong-mi stepped down the next Monday. But this time around, the 2 vacancies would leave only 6 justices on the bench, below the 7-member threshold required to deliver a ruling. The opposition Democratic Party has been calling for the urgent appointment of a left-leaning Judge Ma Eun-hyuk to secure a 6-vote majority to impeach the president, as an early election would favour their party leader Lee Jae-myung. The DP has also been pushing to amend the Constitutional Court Act to extend the retiring justices' terms. The Court Secretary-General said while the suggestion is under internal review, there is no official position yet. When asked if President Yoon's ruling would be made by the 18th, the Court Secretary-General said the aim is still to issue a verdict as swiftly as possible, but declined to specify a date. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Myanmar is reeling from the aftermath of a devastating earthquake that took hundreds of lives as rescue and relief workers from international entities fly in to offer much-needed assistance. An Sung-jin reports.
Buildings have turned into rubble, houses buried in the ground. A rescue team pulls out a young child from a collapsed building in the city of Mandalay in Myanmar after a 7.7 magnitude earthquake hit the country on Friday. As aftershocks continue, the military regime estimates that at least 2,000 people are dead.
A very strong shaking started. Ground was slipping underfoot. The shaking lasted about a minute. When it ended, the walls of the palace and some other buildings were collapsing, and the cladding began to burst.
Experts say that the true death toll could rise far higher as search efforts continue, while there has been difficulty tracking the exact casualties in areas that are controlled by rebel groups. The U.S. Geological Survey says there is a 70% chance that the number of deaths will be above 10,000. Damage has been reported not only in Myanmar but neighboring countries including Thailand and nearby Chinese provinces. The international community, including ASEAN and the United Nations, has been ramping up relief efforts and foreign medical teams have been deployed. The WHO has declared its highest level of emergency while deploying emergency medical teams into Myanmar with trauma kits, medical supplies, and other essentials.
We need urgent assistance, especially for the children, who often suffer the most in these kinds of situations.
Myanmar's military government has also declared a state of emergency. Despite the destruction from the earthquake, the country's military junta continued its airstrikes, which the UN has described as completely outrageous and unacceptable. An Song-jin, Arirang News.
In related news, the Korean government has decided to dispatch a consul from its embassy in Yangon to Mandalay to aid Korean nationals affected by the earthquake. According to the Foreign Ministry, there are some 2,000 South Koreans residing in Myanmar, most of them in Yangon, and about 70 in Mandalay. No Korean casualties have been reported thus far. Authorities here are also offering some $2 million worth of humanitarian assistance to Myanmar as part of relief support. U.S. President Donald Trump is ramping up his rhetoric on both Russia and Ukraine with regard to sealing a ceasefire deal. He's threatening heavier tariffs on Russian oil and vowing, quote, big problems for Kyiv if it backs away from its mineral deal with Washington. Park Hyo-bin has more.
Amid the stalled progress on the Ukraine-Russia ceasefire, U.S. President Donald Trump has expressed strong dissatisfaction with Russian President Vladimir Putin. In an NBC interview on Sunday, Trump revealed that he was very angry after Putin criticized Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's credibility. Trump also said that if Russia is found responsible for prolonging the conflict, he would impose secondary tariffs on Russian oil, ranging from 25% to 50%. He warned that countries purchasing Russian crude oil could face tariffs, signaling economic pressure as potential leverage in the ongoing conflict. Trump also had a message for Zelensky. Speaking to reporters aboard Air Force One on Sunday, Trump criticized the Ukrainian leader for trying to back out of a rare earth metals agreement.
And I think Zelensky, by the way, I see he's trying to back out of the rare earth deal. And if he does that, he's got some problems, big problems. We made a deal on rare earth, and now he's saying, well, you know, I want to renegotiate the deal.
With U.S.-Ukraine negotiations now stalling, Russia has begun rare metals talks with Washington. On Monday, Russian envoy Kirill Dmitriev confirmed that discussions were underway with several companies already expressing an interest. Last month, Putin underscored Russia's vast reserves, looking to position Moscow as a more stable supplier than Ukraine. As diplomatic efforts stall, the potential economic pressure from tariffs may become a crucial turning point in the ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine. Park Hyo-bin, Arirang News.
Here in Seoul, trade ministers of South Korea, China, and Japan met for their agenda ahead of new U.S. tariffs in the days to come. Moon Hye-ryun has more.
The trade ministers of South Korea, China, and Japan met in Seoul for the first time in nearly 6 years and underscored the need for stronger economic ties and pledged to expand trade partnerships amid growing global uncertainties. At the Trilateral Economic and Trade Ministers meeting on Sunday, South Korea's Trade Minister An Duk-gun, China's Commerce Minister Wang Wentao, and Japan's Minister of Economy, Trade and Industry Muto Yoji emphasized the importance of a stable global trade system and vowed to strengthen cooperation in key economic sectors. The discussions came just days before the U.S. government's scheduled announcement of new reciprocal tariffs as the three nations navigate rising protectionist pressures. The meeting was seen as a strategic move to coordinate a response with all three nations facing similar concerns as major U.S. trade deficit partners and potential targets of tariffs. And as a result, the ministers aligned on the broader goal of preserving a stable international trade system. During the talks, the ministers reaffirmed their commitment to multilateral trade frameworks, supporting reforms at the World Trade Organization and expanding the regional comprehensive economic partnership to include new members. They also pledged to accelerate negotiations for a high-level trilateral free trade agreement.
It is necessary to strengthen the implementation of RCEP, in which all three countries have participated, and to create a framework for expanding trade cooperation among the three countries through Korea-China-Japan FTA negotiations.
While South Korea and China currently have an FTA in place, discussions on a three-way agreement have stalled due to differing economic conditions and national priorities. Beyond trade agreements, the ministers addressed broader economic concerns, committing to stabilizing supply chains and expanding cooperation in green and digital industries. 문혜련, Arirang News.
South Korean beauty products have surged in popularity in the U.S., driven by the Korean wave, and have now surpassed French cosmetics. According to Bloomberg on Monday, South Korea emerged as the top exporter of cosmetics to the U.S. in 2024, followed by France and Canada. It cited a report by the U.S. International Trade Commission showing Korean cosmetics exports to the U.S. in 2024 totaled over $1.7 billion. This success can be attributed to the Korean beauty industry's online marketing strategies through platforms like TikTok and Reddit, as well as partnership with major retailers such as Costco and Amazon. Korean pianist Kim Sae-hyun has taken first place at the Langue de Crespo competition, a renowned triennial event in France. According to the Kumho Cultural Foundation on Monday, the 17-year-old won the competition with a rendition of Rachmaninoff's Concerto No. 3 in the final round of the competition this past Saturday. Fellow Korean pianist Hyo-joo placed third. Notably, his brother Hyo-joo was a co-winner of the same competition in 2022. Another past Korean winner is Im Dong-hyuk, who claimed the title in 2001. Time now to take a look at what's been happening in the world of sports. Joining us in the studio is our sports editor, Paul Need. Hello, Paul.
Hello.
Let us start with golf. Kim Hyo-joo has secured her 7th LPGA title.
Yes, the Ford Championship on Sunday, local time in Arizona. Kim Hyo-joo beat former world number 1 Lilia Vu of the United States in a playoff. Kim had been 4 strokes behind heading into the final round, but hit an 8-under 64, including 9 birdies, while Vu hit a 4-under 68. This meant that they both finished at 22 under 266, so went back to the 18th to find a winner. That's where Kim struck a birdie to seal it. It was her 7th LPGA win overall, but first since the Volunteers of America Classic in October 2023. Meanwhile, in the men's game, Korean-Australian Lee Min-woo on Sunday won the Houston Open, finishing at 20 under par, 1 stroke ahead of world number 1 Scottie Scheffler, as well as Gary Woodland, both of the United States, who finished tied at 19 under. The final day saw E hit 4 birdies and 1 bogey for a 3 under 67. It is the 26-year-old's first ever win on the PGA Tour in what was his 56th start. He is the younger brother of LPGA star Lee Min-ji.
Moving on to baseball, the Major League Baseball has a season began at the end of last week. 2 South Korean stars were in the opening day rosters for their respective clubs.
Yes, that's right. Those being Lee Jong-hoo of the San Francisco Giants and Bae Ji-hwan of the Pittsburgh Pirates. For Lee Jong-hoo, he scored twice as the Giants beat the Cincinnati Reds 6-4 on Thursday in their season opener. Then on Sunday, in what was Game 3 of the new season, he recorded his first multi-hit to help the Giants win their opening series 2-1. He batted 2 for 4 with 1 RBI and scored 2 runs against the Reds in a 6-3 win. Batting third, he raised his batting average to .300 and also leads his team 4 runs with 4. Meanwhile, Bae Ji-hwan made 2 appearances for the Pirates against the Miami Marlins, but was run out trying to reach third base in Sunday's 3-2 loss. He'd been left out for the first game, but then appeared in games 3 and 4 in a series that his team lost 3-1.
In domestic baseball, the LG Twins are making headlines with a remarkable 7-game winning streak to start the 2025 season.
Yes, and this sets a new franchise record and brings them closer to the KBO's all-time opening winning streak of 10 matches held by the 2003 Samsung Lions and the 2022 SSG Landers. This week, LG faced the KT Wiz in a 3-game series at Suwon's KT Wiz Park. If they sweep KT, they'll tie the league record. However, all matches scheduled for April 1st on Tuesday have been postponed. This is to mourn the death of a female fan in her 20s who died in hospital on Monday after a piece of metal fell 18 meters, hit a concession stand, then hit her on the head at the NC Dinos Stadium in Changwon on Saturday. All NC Dinos matches this week are now postponed.
Hope for no more tragedy. Okay, thank you, Paul. See you next week.
Thank you.
On the very last day of March, the cold snap is gradually fading away. It was chilly this morning, just like the weekend. However, the weather warmed up quickly and the temperature in Seoul rose to 14 degrees Celsius during the day. It will start off a bit warmer at 5 degrees tomorrow morning and will rise to 16 degrees in Seoul tomorrow. Dry weather advisories have been issued for inland areas. The atmosphere will become drier as the warm westerly winds blow in. Please be careful not to cause any fires in these dry conditions. Tomorrow morning, Gyeongju will start off at 2 degrees, Busan and Jeju at 6 degrees. Daily highs will move up to around 15 to 17 degrees across the country, feeling much warmer than last weekend. On Wednesday, there is more rain forecast for central parts of the country, Jeollabuk-do province and Gyeongsangbuk-do province. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
That is Newscenter for tonight. Thank you for watching. A panel session up next.